of you that are currently certified and needing to transition over, those of you that are mentors or supervising instructors for people wanting to go through the certification process, or if you are someone who is wanting to go through the certification process, so an applicant or a candidate. So I hope that during this time I can give you guys some encouragement and some tips and pass on some common answers that have come about during my discussions with people about this certification process. And like Lauren said, this is going to be recorded, so please make sure you guys remain on mute if you're joining in live, and that just helps reduce background noise. If you have a question, you can either type it in the chat box area, or I will give you guys like prompted question and answer time. It'll be more towards the end, where if something comes up and you want to ask it verbally, you can definitely do that, but it will be recorded, so just keep that in mind as far as sharing video, sharing your voice. With questions being typed out, I will check the chat box periodically, but to help keep my brain on track, I will not be looking at it all the time. So I promise I will get to that. So if you guys have any questions that come up, put them in the chat box. Other than that, I'm going to kind of just run through this list of common questions and answers, and a little bit about me. Lauren did introduce me. Sorry, it's been a long day. She didn't introduce me, but we're gonna go ahead and my brain froze. I'm so sorry. Questions about me. There we go. Holy cow. So about me. So I'm based out of Arizona. I've been with Path International and Equine Assisted Activities and Therapies industry for about 12 years. I'm a advanced therapeutic riding instructor, equine specialist, mental health and learning, instructor mentor, and then for the old registered certification and workshop, I'm also associate faculty and workshop faculty and certification evaluator. So I have that under my belt. I worked at a Premier Accredited Center for almost 10 years. And during that time, we hosted a lot of Path International events, a ton of the old registered workshop certification. We did a lot of instructor training and mentoring and development, which is why I'm so comfortable with this topic and with mentoring and training and certification, is because I had a good solid start in that at that center. And now with transitioning over, I've been trying to stay on top of it so that I can help other mentors and instructors in training navigate this new CTRI process. And when I'm not doing all of that, I run my own business. It's called Hoofs and Footfalls. And like she said, I specialize in education for instructors in our industry. I do a lot of online education, one-to-one coaching. We do video reviews of teaching. We have the Intuitive Instructor Club, which has on-demand educational content for master and advanced level riding instructors. So just lots of educational opportunities. And now that things are slowly starting to open back up, I'm back to workshops and doing clinics and trainings, which is great. And I promise my brain doesn't freeze up this much when I do those clinics and trainings. So sorry about that. All right, so starting with questions. I guess the first one that I want to talk about is kind of the question or the just the feeling of being overwhelmed with this process and trying to wrap your head around everything. I know there's been a lot of emails going out, and then now not only are we transitioning from an old certification way to a new certification way, but now we have COVID throwing new stuff in and changing deadlines and all of that. So I want you guys to know that I hear you. I feel some of the stress. I've felt over looking at the information. I am not employed by Path at all. I am just a certified instructor, and I do this because I care about mentors and supervising instructors and instructors in training in our industry. And I very much believe in continuing education and part of that being certification and training processes, because I just think it makes our industry stronger. So I am not employed by PATH, so all this stuff I'm sharing with you guys is just one-to-one, I guess, or instructor to instructor. And this is my information, whatever the PATH office says goes. So if I misspeak or information changes in the future, please know that PATH International has final say, and I'm by no means trying to represent the office in any ways. This is just certified professional to other professionals in our industry. So with that being said, because I'm a fellow certified professional, fellow mentor, I know that there's a lot of information. I have become very familiar with the old registered therapeutic riding instructor workshop certification process. So transitioning over now to understanding this new CTRI process has not been as big of a change. There's a lot of similar components, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And there are some new components as well, but it's not that bad. So I promise it's obtainable, it's doable. I actually think the new CTRI process gives a little bit more wiggle room for what can count towards your application for instructors in training. There's actually been a couple changes in the application that I've been very thankful for, especially during this COVID time, and I'll talk about those in a second. But just know that you're not the only one feeling alone, or you're not the only one feeling like this is a lot of information. So I hope to kind of break it down for you guys and answer questions. So one of the questions that comes up a lot from currently certified instructors, so therapeutic guiding instructors that are either the registered, advanced, or master level, is they are wondering, in order to transition over to this new CTRI, Certified Therapeutic Guiding Instructor certification, do they now have to go through this whole new certification process? And the answer is no. If you are already certified and you've maintained your certification, you just do a quick transition test and you submit continuing education and you're good to go. The transition test is pretty easy. I purposely took it closed book and didn't need any references. I will be very upfront though that I am in the standards manual a lot, and I am in the PATH education materials a lot. So just look over those if you're going to take it, but it's not that bad. So you don't need to go through the whole certification process if you're already certified and you've maintained your certification. And then another question that comes up along those lines is, how long do I have to transition over if I'm certified in the old way to certified in the new way? And the old date was December 31st of this year, 2020, but because of COVID, PATH has actually, the office has extended the transition deadline to June 30th, 2021. So we have just under a year still to transition over. The next time your renewal comes up, if you're certified the old way, just go ahead and transition over. It's pretty painless. It's not that bad. I promise it'll be okay. If you have any questions about that, let me know and I'd be happy to chat with you about it, talk you through it. Make sure you give it a couple days for the test link to come through for you to take that test as well. All right, so next question is, well, okay, what is this new CTRI process? What does it even look like? So how many of you guys are familiar with the old registered way? The ones that are joining in live? Okay, so about half of you guys. So with the old registered therapeutic riding instructor certification, if you guys remember, the person would start getting into the equine assisted activities and therapies industry. They would work on obtaining their 25 supervised teaching hours. Under the old way, those 25 hours had to be group hours, which meant 2 or more students in a class. And those had to be mounted hours, so butts in the saddle for those hours to count. During that accumulation of your 25 hours, it was recommended that you go to the workshop, which was mandatory. The workshop was good for a year, and then you had to submit your application to get your instructor and training letter, which that involved taking the standards course and an online, like open book instructor quiz readiness test. During that application phase, you also had to submit your equine skills checklist that was signed by a PATH International professional. And then you got your IT letter or your instructor and training letter, which meant that you could then go test for certification, which was in person. You would do a 20-minute teaching sample test to 2 students with disabilities, and you would do a riding pattern, okay? A lot of people would get all of their training, their supervised teaching hours, their application and everything done, and they would go attend the workshop and the certification all together at once in the same event, which usually spanned 4 days. The people that were a little bit more successful in the process, or that I noticed as a host site rep for being 8 years or so, were the ones that chose to split up the education component, the workshop. They would attend the workshop first, go back, study, keep learning, keep preparing, finish up their supervised teaching hours, and then they would go certify by doing the teaching and the riding. Those were the individuals that tended to be more well-rounded, more well-prepared when they came into the certification process, okay? So that's the old way. The new way, the way that you train your instructors, so good teaching technique, arena presence, learning how to adapt how you teach to students with disabilities, learning how to mount and dismount, volunteer management, equine management, like all the things that make up a therapeutic riding instructor and what you as a mentor or supervising instructor would teach to your mentee, those are not going to change. I can tell you that the way I'm training my mentees hasn't changed. It's actually been less emphasis on having to prepare for the certification days than the old way. So those of you that are already mentors or supervising instructors that trained under the old way, you shouldn't have to change your training too much unless you tidy it up and make it even more educational. Like, you can always improve in training, but you shouldn't have to change it too much if you already have a really good solid process. The new way, the new CTRI process, the individuals that are going to go through this certification process, they're going to get everything together, submit their application, and then they sit for the proctored exam. So everything that they need to get together before they submit their application is they need to get, and I'm going to pull up, sorry, just so I say it correctly. So they're going to get documentation of their equine handling skills. They've got 2 options there, option A or option B. They need to get documentation of their equine management skills, option A or option B. And I'm not going to go into super detail on this because it's a longer talk if we go into detail about the application. And then there's part 3, which is your video demonstration of riding. So in this application phase, they have got to compile this video. Think of the video of them teaching this riding pattern and the warm-up to a rider as what used to be the teaching and the riding portion we would go do in person. That's kind of now been put into this application phase, okay? They also have to get their 25 supervised teaching hours, and then also experience working with individuals with disabilities in kind of like a volunteer assistant setting. There's like 2 goals for the part 4. Okay, so they're going to get all these things together during this application phase. Theoretically, you've got about 2 years to do this because the teaching hours are the things that would expire the quickest out of it, which would be 2 years. So you have 2 years to pull all this stuff together. You're going to get all the pieces. You're going to take the standards test. You do need to have a standards exam completed, and that should be within 1 year date of you submitting your application. You're going to submit this application, which includes your video, and then the Path International office is going to review it. If the application, including the teaching video, is accepted, then you get a letter that says that you can go sit for the proctored exam, which is closed book, at a testing center in your location. From the time you get your results of congratulations, your application has been accepted, you have a year to go sit for that test. You don't have to go to the next like teaching block. You have a full year. When you purchase the application online through Path International, where you're actually going to submit your application, you're going to upload the video, you have a full year to turn everything in. Usually people like purchase it and then turn it all in within a week or so, but you do have a year there, and then you have a year to sit for that proctored exam, okay? The video, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail later, but the video is similar to, I don't want to say it's exactly like, it's very similar to the old registered instructor workshop and certification when we had somebody who could not ride the tests themselves. They would have to teach the warm-up and the pattern to a person who is physically able to ride that test. So this video that we're submitting reminds me of the accommodation process for someone who could not ride for the old registered certification way. So again, I've seen that as a host site. I've had a mentee go through it that way. I've also seen it as an evaluator. So that's why this video component wasn't a huge shock to me or hard for me to wrap my head around, because I've seen it before, but I understand that a large majority of you guys have not seen it. But just know that this isn't like some random process that has never existed before. It's actually kind of similar to something that's already been happening. So that is the flow of the CTRI process. Any questions on that? Because I know that's kind of a big thing that I tried to summarize into a short section. So feel free to either unmute yourself or you can type in the chat box, and then I'm going to just look at the next questions.
Hi, this is Sue. I guess I have a couple of questions. Firstly, so there is no workshop anymore, a Path offering workshop, so will there be?
Good question. So the workshop or the educational component is no longer required. However, it is highly recommended. And so that kind of does push it back on the mentor or the supervising instructor to really push your mentee to get this education. I don't have any information as far as, you know, are these workshops going to be provided in the future as educational opportunities through Path International? I do know that they are okay with private entities. So like myself and other instructors, we do workshops and trainings to try to meet this educational component that a lot of people need. We have online videos to help meet that. So it's no longer required, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be the education. Yeah, good question. Yes.
Sorry, I've got another, and then I'll be quiet. So really, just thinking, really the evaluation of the candidate is really done by the center, because you're evaluating their teaching, you know, their 25 teaching hours. You're probably helping them prepare the video. I saw the example one that's on YouTube a few days ago, yes. Which is, you know, teaching an able-bodied and cognitively able person. There's no video submission of the candidate teaching people with disabilities.
Correct.
It's entirely on the center to say, this person has done enough, proved themselves to us, pass, we think they should pass.
Correct.
And it's also up to the center as well to say to the candidate, no, you're not ready, or no, I don't think you're going to cut it, and sorry, we can't mentor you anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And there is it's a whole nother conversation. I have a mentor training boot camp that I have.
Sorry, that's my dog.
Oh no, you're good. That's you know, to help you guys define policies and procedures and screening processes, whether or not it's for the CTRI application, but just because I've personally experienced that of like, okay, well, where's the line that we need to draw of minimum requirements to set these people up for success? Where do we, as professionals that are putting our numbers down on people saying, yeah, they're good to go, you know, where should we draw the line? So there's definitely, we're trying to get information out there and pull tools together, but yeah, it definitely does fall more on the mentors. And it should, in the past, I've definitely seen people go through certification in the old way that weren't prepared, where they really, their mentors should not have signed off on them and let them go. But there was, you know, kind of that final in-person step of the ride and the teaching. Now it's just the video, but I can tell you that the video is not just like a script or checking boxes, making sure you say a certain number of what, how's, why's. You've got to teach to what you see in the moment. You have to teach to what's in front of you. You have to have good teaching theory, fairly good knowledge. I understand that it's not to an individual special needs, and this is my opinion personally. I do have mixed feelings about that, because I've seen some very wonderful instructors to able-bodied students that struggle with students that have disabilities. So personally, I struggle with that, but then again, that is just makes us as mentors and supervising instructors, makes our role even more important.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering whether PATH are they gonna redo the mentor train? You know, I did the online mentor training. There are now mentor workshops. I've not attended one of those, but are they gonna offer training to mentors, to centers, of how to get this right and get the right people through, and how to let people know when things aren't going so well?
On the PATH front, I don't know.
You're not PATH.
I can tell you that that's a huge passion of mine personally, is to train and prepare mentors. So I do a lot of either one-on-one with mentors and supervising instructors, or groups. Like if there's a need for, you know, okay, how do we start reviewing lessons? You know, let's get some mock videos together, and how do we pick strengths and give them areas of weakness to improve, and how do you pick the top ones? So like, that's something that, again, I'm not trying to upsell my business, but that's definitely a passion of mine, because I have struggled with that over these past 10 years, and I'm where I'm at because I've made a ton of mistakes as a mentor and a supervising instructor. I was at a high volume center where we trained a ton of people. And I also had some really good mentors who were willing to share their techniques and training with me, thankfully. So I get that there's not a ton out there. So let me know if there's anything I can do to help you guys, because that is definitely something I love to do, and our industry needs mentors, and even more so now.
I'm concerned about consistency across centers and across PATH, because
well, and I can, so that happens though, even in the old way. I'm not trying to minimize the concern. I'm right there with you with the concern. But there was a huge spectrum of people that passed certification, whether they like just barely squeaked by, or they went in knowing that they could at least teach, but they were going to fail the writing portion. So, oh, well, I'll just submit the video. I've seen the video option used as a crutch. People going into certification knowing they wouldn't pass. So even the old way has its faults too, along those same lines. So yeah, but I agree with you that that is a problem that we need to address, and that's part of why I do what I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good questions. Any other ones on this section? Okay. All right. So we talked about general flow. Workshop is not required anymore. Old way versus new way. Application. So the application has different parts to it now. And if you are an instructor who has transitioned over to the CTRI certification, or you just got certified through the CTRI process, you have to have 120 hours of teaching therapeutic riding before you can sign off on the 25 supervised teaching hours for your mentee under the CTRI way. For those of you that were the old registered certified instructor and you transitioned over, PATH has it's not an accommodation, an allowance form where they actually count some of your prior experience towards your 120 hours, but then you do still need to teach the new way. The theory behind it is that you're not having someone who just passed certification who's now going to start mentoring a new instructor so that they pass the certification. They're wanting to try to get people to have the 120 hours of teaching under the belt. Are they doing it right during those 120 hours? We don't know. Again, that's one of those like, all right, how do we tighten that up? Again, that's why I do coaching and mentoring with certified instructors, is so we make those 120 hours count. And then once you have those 120 hours, you can then sign off on the 25 supervised teaching hours for a candidate. If you don't have the 120 hours yet, you can still help them with the other sections of their component. You can still sign off on the equine management section. You can still sign off on the equine handling section. You can sign off on the experience with individuals with disabilities. You can help them start studying and preparing for the test and just becoming an instructor. So just because you yourself haven't reached those 120 hours yet does not mean that you are not useful at all. There's definitely a ton that you can start doing until you accumulate those hours. Those 120 hours for a certified professional can be private or group. It does have to be therapeutic riding and it does have to be mounted, but it doesn't have to be group lessons. I think there's, we have it so ingrained into our brains that those hours, the teaching hours always have to be group. That is for the old registered teaching hours way, those had to be group. For your 120 experience hours, before you can be a mentor or a supervisor, group or private, just butts in the saddle, therapeutic riding. Now, the 25 supervised teaching hours that CTRI applicant needs, this is actually something I like better about the new way versus the old way. 12 of those 25 supervised teaching hours can be private lessons, which for me, I teach mostly private lessons. I only have a handful of semi-private lessons. So that made me happy that I can actually have mentees out to my place to do private lessons. And also now with this whole COVID thing, a lot of centers are starting up with private lessons. The private lessons, there's no minimum requirement of volunteers. So you could be teaching an independent student or maybe a student who just has a horse leader, as long as they're a therapeutic riding student and it's mounted, you can have 12 of those 25 supervised teaching hours be private lessons. 13 of those hours need to be group. So that means 2 or more students up in the saddle at a time. And then 3 of those hours, you do need to have full teams. So a horse and 2 sidewalkers with both students. And that's so that the individual gets experience with managing that many volunteers and likely working with a little bit more involved student who needs that type of team, okay? So that's one thing I like better about this new CTRI process, is that it's broken up a little bit better, and the components that count for your application when it comes to like equine management, handling stuff, they accept other things outside of a certified professional signing off. So like they count college experience, they count show experience, they count experience like if you've been a teacher's aide in a special needs classroom, that can count towards the disability section. So there's a couple things in this application process that I think it actually helps to hopefully raise the level of candidate that we're getting through this process. All right, any questions on the 120 hours for the mentor or supervising instructor. Okay. Let's see. So next question I get a lot is, I feel like my mentee or I am stuck and we're not moving forward in this process, either due to the overwhelming amount of information or due to COVID-19. So something I would highly suggest you do is start studying. I have a blog that will put the link in the chat area, and it'll be down below in the replay area and all of that. But I have a blog on how you can study and prepare and make a study guide, and that will make you a stronger mentee when you actually get to teach. And it will also prepare you for the written exam as well. So even though COVID has maybe stalled out a few things for now, you can still study and prepare and make yourself a stronger instructor, even if you're not out there teaching yet. And also the private hours. So with this new CTRI process, 12 of those 25 supervised teaching hours can be private lessons. So that might be a way to kind of get things rolling a little bit during this time. And then also the application, if someone is working with a potential mentor or potential supervising instructor who is still working on their 120 hours before they can sign off, start working on all those other components of the application. So the equine handling, the equine management, the working with individuals with disabilities, and then even practicing the video. You know, start teaching in front of a camera. Stress inoculation, put yourself in that position so you start getting used to that feeling and that stress, so that when you go to record your video, it's not a big deal. That's something that you can start preparing for months in advance, okay? How do you prepare for the video, and how is the video for the application formatted? That's another question that comes up a lot. So how do you prepare for the video? Teach, practice teaching, practice good, solid teaching. So what, how's, why's, teaching to what you see in the moment, giving effective feedback. So not just telling your rider what they need to fix, but how they need to fix it, and then seeing if that actually fixed the problem that you saw, or if it was not a helpful cue. Come up with different ways of how to explain things. Build your toolbox of explanations and like those word pictures where you can tell someone to do something in fewer words. Practice teaching. Maybe you don't teach walk, trot, canter a lot. Maybe you only teach walk, walk, trot. Practice teaching trot, canter. Watch videos on that. So start preparing for that. The video is maximum of 20 minutes. And during that time, you are going to teach like a warm-up section at the beginning, and then you teach the pattern. The pattern that you have to demonstrate during the video, or I guess your rider has to demonstrate during the video, is the pattern that we used to have to ride for the old registered certification process. So again, there's another overlap. One of the mentees I worked with and did a coaching session with to help her with the video, she wasn't my full-time mentee, but it was someone who was just stuck on the video. I saw her teach a therapeutic riding lesson, and she did amazing. She had what's, how's, why. She had specific feedback. She was teaching to what she saw. She had specific praise. It was a beautiful lesson. And then she sent me her sample video for the CTRI teaching demo video. And it was rough. And so I was like, well, I know you can teach because I've seen you teach. So let's take a look at this video and see if we can look at it in a different way. Think of the video as a therapeutic riding lesson. Yes, you're teaching somebody who's able-bodied, but still, you're gonna go in there, you're gonna talk about what your goal is for the day, talk about the horse, talk about what the student wants to achieve. You're gonna go in, start warming up through all the components. The pattern that you are going to demonstrate at the end, break that down into the components, the riding skills that you will need to successfully perform the pattern. So within that pattern, you've got to do bends around corners, you have to do posting diagonal, you have to do walk, trot, transition, trot to walk transition, trot to canter, canter to trot, canter to sitting trot, sitting trot versus posting trot. There's all these skills layered in. Half halts or checks on the reins, effective use of your natural aids. How do we do that? When do we do that? Why do we do that? So all of those can be layered in during that kind of warm up it's your meat area of the lesson where you're going to be covering those skills and practicing them. And then your progression is that you put them all together in a pattern. And then you cue and reinforce things that you were practicing during that bulk meat section of your lesson, which was your warm-up. And you're going to cue and reinforce during the pattern because you're going to be telling your student where to go during the pattern. So you're limited on how much, like what, how, why teaching you can do during that time. The video might have a little bit more talking than what you would do in a more involved therapeutic writing lesson. But again, this is, you have to demonstrate your knowledge, which does, with the nature of the beast of a video, you have to verbalize it. So if you see something going on, well, you want to verbalize that through a specific praise so that whoever's evaluating your video knows, oh, okay, that instructor didn't correct that or didn't say anything because they identified it was well. You have to like say almost everything that's going on inside your head. And again, you don't want it like, for lack of better terms, word diarrhea, but you want it, you know, efficient, but you also need to get the information out and let them know what you're seeing, or else we don't know if you're seeing it or if you just got a really good writer who can just do it. So that's the challenge of the video, but that's kind of how it's formatted. Any questions on the video? And there was, I'm going to look here really quick. So there was a question about the video came in. For the writing video, are there specifications of the arena that can be used for certain dimensions? So the specifications for the arena are that it has to meet Path International standards. So you do have to have some type of gate or barrier. The height of the arena is actually just suggested as per Path International standards. So you could technically ride in a dressage like court that just has the little tiny railing, but you would just need to close off the end and make sure you have something blocking the gate area. And as far as dimensions go, keep in mind that during the pattern, if you are in a very tiny arena with a very big moving horse, you're going to have less time to say. So you do have to be a little strategic on thinking about the size of the arena that you have and the speed and gait of the horse that rider is going to be using as well. I've seen arenas that are too big and they had to chop off a piece of the arena as well because it was too much, too big, it would take too long, and they would run over the time. So yeah, you've got to kind of practice it beforehand. You know, the video that came out, the Path released, I talked to the mentor of that candidate, and she did a wonderful job, the mentor and the candidate. And she said that they did probably 15 takes before they got to that video. So it takes time. It's not just you go out, you shoot it once, you turn it in. You've got to get used to teaching in front of the camera. You have to get a feel for what is out there. And that's not cheating because you can't script it. You have to teach to what's in front of you. And every single ride with that horse and that rider pair is going to be slightly different. And as an evaluator, we can tell if you're teaching to what's there in the moment or if you're just scripting something. So that's something that you can tell. Let's see. Let me see if there was any other questions that came through written for the video. Oh, let's see. Okay, I think that was all that I saw come through for the video. If you guys have any questions on the video, let me know. I actually saw another question for the supervised teaching hours. Someone said or asked, for the teaching hours, the form asks for total mounted time. My center does 30-minute slots with 25 minutes of mounted time. So should we be recording 25 minutes for each teaching lesson? Correct. Yeah, butts in the saddle. So including mounting and dismounting time, because that's part of your teaching skills. But, oh no, where'd it go? But yeah, you shouldn't be counting grooming and tacking before. If your students walk the horses around the arena 10 minutes before and then they get on and they only ride for 20 minutes, you only teach 20. I also have a layering system of where my mentees don't jump in and teach the whole lesson right away. We start with the mounts and the dismounts, then they do the warm-ups, and then we layer in other pieces. for those first few handful of lessons that my mentees teach, they're only getting 10, maybe 15 minutes out of a 30, 45-minute lesson. And that's because me as a mentor, I'm very strict about, though 25 hours is really not a lot to get a certification to work with special needs individuals on a 1,000-pound prey animal. That's not a lot of hours. I understand it takes a lot of time to acquire it, but it's not a lot of time when you look at it in the big picture. So as a mentor, I'm very strict on those hours of, you are teaching and butts are in the saddle for your hours to count. But that process usually turns out a very solid instructor. Let me see if there was any other hours. Let's see. I'll get to those in a second. And mentors, well, I'm gonna get to, there's something on my mind that I'm gonna get to in just a second, sorry. Okay, so let's see here. I apologize for dogs barking. My husband and kids just got home. Let's see, how do you study and prepare for the CTRI process and exam? I have a whole blog on it that has some of my top tips that I give my own mentees to start preparing for. I'm a very big advocate of giving my mentees the tools they need to study on their own and putting a lot of that responsibility on them to study. And then we test and we apply that when we're working together out in the arena during those hours together. I also have a CTRI schooling session replay. I did a live version, I think it was last month, but I do have it up for replay, and it has like 7 hours of studying and understanding the application, and here's tips and tools, and we go over the video review and all of that. So if you want a super detailed breakdown of the CTRI process and how to study and prepare and do all of that, check that out and let me know if you have any questions about that. Let's see. I see that there are 2 books put out by Path International, the Education Guide and the Study Guide. Which one should I get if I can only afford one? What's the difference? Do I need both? So I have both. So I have the Instructor Education Guide. I actually taught an Intro to Therapeutic Horsemanship course off of this at the college level. I really like this book. For those of you that are familiar with the Registered Instructor Workshop, like the manual we used to get, this reminds me of like the manual on steroids. So there's like pictures and it's laid out really well. I really, really like this Instructor Education Guide, and I make all my mentees get this. CTRI Study Guide. I think this is a very, very valuable tool for mentors and supervising instructors. I think personally, and again, I'm not bashing this book, I'm not bashing the other book. If a mentor, if an instructor in training, so someone who's just newer to the industry, starting out, has to choose between the two, I would have them get this education guide. And then, just like you would study off of a textbook for any college course or high school course, you're going to create little quiz questions of, okay, well, you know, what does this type of mount look like? Or what does this disability present like? And there's terminology in the back here for equine and medical. So this would be the book that I would recommend mentees getting. This is also a good book just to add to your library in general to make you a good instructor. CTRI Study Guide. This has a lot of really good resources in here for how to practice and prepare for each section. So like for the equine management section, it says to help you study and prepare, you should shadow a vet tech, you should shadow a farrier and ask these questions. So this is more of like it kind of makes me think of like a mentor training guide and gives you ideas of how you can go more in depth and provide more opportunities. If someone does not have a mentor yet, this might be a little overwhelming. And again, this is an amazing book. Like, I think this is probably a missing piece of the whole mentor thing. But I think that this might be a little much if someone doesn't have a mentor to help them through this. However, there are sample test questions in here. So if someone gets really bad test anxiety and they want to see the test and the test format, then they might want to see this. This book is smaller and it references a lot of the stuff in this book. This book is smaller than this book, and this book is more expensive than this book. So if I had to choose between the two, for the first one, I would recommend for my mentee, I would have them get the education guide. Again, they're both great. If they can swing both, I'd have them get both. If you're a mentor or a supervising instructor, I would add this to your library because it's a really good book, but this is also going to help you out a lot, the CTRI study guide. Okay. Again, I have both. I like them both, but I understand that financially, sometimes you have to choose one or the other. Those are kind of my recommendations. I think Cindy from, and I don't want to like quote her, put her on the spot, but Cindy from the TR, Lessons in TR, she kind of had the same take on it as well, as far as like, this is kind of mentor-ish guide, and this is more like entry-level information. So just personal opinion on them, but I think they're great books. All right, let's see. How do I find a mentor or supervising instructor? So one, you can go to Path International website and click on Find a Mentor. It is your responsibility, though, to make sure that that person is up to date. You might have to track them down because sometimes we forget that we submitted a mentor form up there, and we might have changed centers or changed contact information. So sometimes those are a little outdated. And again, that falls on the person to update the form. But there's the mentor list on the PATH website. However, those are only people who have gone through the PATH International Mentor Training, which is kind of just a general best practice training for mentors, and that is for mentors in all the certifications that PATH offers. So ES, therapeutic riding, therapeutic driving, interactive vaulting, all of those. If you want to find a supervising instructor, so that is someone who has their 120 hours of teaching and can sign off on them, but is not necessarily a designated mentor, you can use that person. I'm trying to build a list of people who have accumulated those 120 hours who are willing to mentor or supervise, I guess, because PATH, as a bonus of going through their mentor training, you get listed on the website and you get calls. Like I literally just got a call today from someone who found my contact info on the mentor list. But there's a hole right now for tracking mentors, supervising instructors who are not mentors that are able to sign off on hours. So I have a form that I'm keeping track of. I can pop it here in the comments at the very end. If you are willing to mentor or supervise, fill it out. If you're a PATH designated mentor, you can still put your contact information on there anyways, because it's great to have multiple sources. But people can reach out to me, tell me where they're at, and then if I have anybody in their area, I will only share that information with them. I'm not just going to send out the mass list and be like, here, have fun. I'm going to filter, try to protect information as much as I can. And mentors and supervising instructors, those going through the certification process, don't be offended, don't be shocked if your mentor or supervising instructor charges. A lot of them good mentors and good supervising instructors charge for their time because you are basically walking out with a formal education. No, you're not sitting through college courses and getting a diploma, but you're ending your time, hopefully, with your mentor, supervising instructor, with a nationally, theoretically, internationally recognized certification. So a lot of mentors charge for their time. I charge for my time. Because you're not just getting this certification in your teaching hours, you're getting a formal education out of it. A lot of the really good mentors out there, they're higher up in the industry. They run their own centers. They've been doing this a while. You're getting valuable education from these people. So don't be shocked if you're asked to pay. It's worth the investment. Think of it like investing in any other certification or diploma training. If you're, blue collar trade skill training, you're going to go to mechanic school or welding school and get a certificate in training and pay money to go do that. Massage, you're going to go to massage school, get training for that. If you want a bachelor's degree, you're going to pay a school and go for that. There are grants that you can apply for, like local educational stuff. That's going to be state dependent, but I do know that there's funding out there. Cindy, Lessons in TR, she knows of one that's in her state. I can't remember the state she lives in, but I heard from her that if you look and if you dig, there might be funding available for you to help offset the training costs. But that, again, you know, making a livable wage in our industry, being able to not just make money off of lessons to help feed our horses and to help pay bills and everything, but also train new instructors. That's part of what we do in the industry. You wouldn't go to a professor in a college and want them to do stuff for free. You pay the school that then pays the professor. We're just kind of taking out the middle person here when we get to that mentor supervising instructor relationship and their mentee. Let's see. Once I'm a CTRI, do I have to accumulate a certain number of teaching hours by a certain date? I heard that there's like 120 hours floating out there. What does that mean? So a lot of people, once they get certified as a CTRI, they think that that 120-hour rule applies to them, and they have to accumulate those 120 hours by a certain time frame, or like every few years, or they lose their certification. That 120 hours only counts really if you're going to be mentoring or supervising somebody who's then going for the CTRI certification. So there's no, like, you could get certified and then teach 2 hours a week for a year, or, you know, teach 2 hours every other week or a month, and you could still maintain your certification as long as you keep up to date on your CEUs. And again, that flows into the question of, is it expensive to maintain my certification CEUs? So PATH has like a CEU cost estimator guide on their website. That is a very steep, like, worst case scenario version of you maintaining your certification. You can find a lot of continuing education for free or low cost if you know where to look. I know Intuitive Instructor Club, the thing that I do with 3 other amazing master and advanced level riding instructors, we have almost 50 hours of education in there now. You can get all but, like, I think 1 of your hours in there for like 120 bucks in a year, not like $600–800. You should still be going out and taking riding lessons. You should still be taking groundwork lessons. You should be getting coaching from a professional that's more advanced than you, but you don't have to be investing hundreds and thousands of dollars into maintaining your certification. So you could do continuing ed for a couple $100 a year. And that's like 20 hours a year, not 20 hours every 2 years, which is what is required now at the CTRI. So don't get worried about that. I think they just put that out there as like a worst case scenario if you do have to pay for everything. Let's see. I saw a question come in. You said that supervising instructors need 120 hours after they have transitioned to the new CTRI requirement. Yes, so you need to have 120 hours of teaching before you can sign off on those 25 supervised teaching hours. If you have been in this industry a while, take a look at the PATH International form that are in the comments, and I think it can be posted below on the replay, but there's an allowance form that kind of counts stuff before you transitioned, but you have to turn that in by December 31st of 2021 to get that allowance if you transitioned over. If you're an advanced or master level instructor though, and you transition over, which you need to, you can automatically start signing off hours, because our certifications at the advanced and the master level account for the pieces that they wanted people to experience during those 120 teaching hours, if that makes sense. All right, let me see if there were any other questions here. If you guys have any other questions, you can either unmute yourself or drop them in the comments. I'm just gonna read over the ones that got sent to me before the meeting to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so it's concerning that many centers have no plans to reopen to groups anytime soon, yet group lessons are a requirement for a portion of CTRI supervised teaching hours. What does PATH suggest candidates to do to accomplish these hours? Will there be allowances for expired portions of this and other parts of the application packet due to COVID? So really the only piece that would really expire quickly would be those supervised teaching hours, and you have 2 years. I sure hope that this whole mess is over in 2 years. So I'm going to think positive and think that, you know, maybe by 2021, it's going to be a better year and we'll be out of the weeds in a few months. So my best advice right now is to knock out those 12 private hours and then see if you can get, you know, 2 lower risk immune, you know, individuals that could maybe do the semi-private lessons. So just 2 in a class that don't need a full team of volunteers, knock those out, save the 3 hours that require full teams for 2 riders till the end, which really, that works out well because as you gain experience as an instructor, managing all those components come easier. That's kind of how my mentoring progression works anyways, is we start private, add in a horse leader, add in a sidewalker, add in a full team, add in more pieces. So that's kind of a natural progression anyways. But the other components, like your disability hours, your equine, it's either equine management or equine handling, that expires in 10 years. So you've got a ton of time there. Just don't buy the application online. That would be the only thing that would expire in a year. So wait till you have all of your pieces together, including the video, before you purchase that online application. And testing centers, there's, like, I pulled it up to see what's here in Phoenix. Again, I'm in a huge city, but there's like, I think 10 or 15 testing centers here in my city. So that shouldn't be too bad either. Let's see. My center is asking if I have paperwork to show that I have started the CTRI application. I have not been able to find anything like this on the website. I understand that I can start to accrue my hours and take the standards exam at any time as long as my hours are less than 2 years old and my passing score is less than a year old. Yep, that's correct. Is there anything I need to show that I've started my application process for their records? That is going to be center to center. They might be thinking the old way. A lot of centers, the old registered way, they would require you to like either audit or attend a workshop and also have your IT letter before they would start doing the supervised teaching hours. This new way, I think centers that are very used to the old way, we're going to have to make that shift of now just screening applicants and what is our minimum requirement as a mentor or supervising instructor or as a center for that individual to take them on in training. We're going to have to do that screening, which we should be doing even the old way, because an IT letter really doesn't mean anything. Sitting through a workshop doesn't really mean anything. So I would say that that's going to be center dependent. For me personally, I have to see a demonstration of riding skills or an equivalent of it if someone's no longer able to ride. And then I also get a baseline of teaching. So that's what I require a mentor, but that's going to be center to center. And no one at my center has done the new CTRI process. We all have questions. Feel free to reach out to me. You know, if it's a brief chat, I'm happy to chat with you guys. I don't charge anything for phone calls or emails. If it's something though where it's like super in depth, I might suggest you do the online schooling session for the CTRI. It's like $25 if you're IAC member, $35 if you're not. You get 3 months access to it. It's got a workbook. It's got like 7 hours of education on there. And that's just because with how many people that reach out and ask questions, which I'm so happy people have my contact info. I love talking to people, but I've only got so many hours in a day. That's just the most time efficient way of doing it. And you get to work through it on your own time. So we don't have to like figure out a schedule or anything of when it works for both of us. Let's see. Let me see if there's any other ones. Any other questions? Documentation equine. Let's see. Oh, documentation of equine skills and equine management. What activities are you looking for to show equine handling skills? There is on the application that Path has, it gives a little description of what can count towards each of those. Again, each center might have different requirements. They might require you to go through all of their volunteer training and all of their horse handler training and everything along those lines before they sign off on any of your equine components. That's okay. That's up to the center. That's up to that mentor supervising instructor. So like I ask questions. If people come volunteer with me, I can screen for a lot of stuff. If it's something I haven't seen, we might pull a horse out and do lunging or have them polo wrap for me or, you know, whatever I need to do. So that's gonna be dependent on the mentor and how they run their process. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss anything on the Region 11 page. All right. Sorry, just reading really quick. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or put it in the chat box really quick. So mentor, it's been extremely hard to sift through the order of what they need to do in testing process after submitting the application. So I know that I think the old registered way, like the pieces you had to do, was more confusing than this new way. And I think it's just because we were so used to the old way that made sense. But just, you have to get all of your pieces of the application together, turn that in, and then you can go sit for the test. That's kind of like the super cut and dry order. Let's see. Super overwhelmed with everything, simple step-by-step guide would be great, and a timeline. I have that in the CTRI schooling session. It actually has like a suggested timeline and time frame breakdown of how long it should likely take you to do each one if you do it thoroughly, kind of best case scenario and worst case scenario. And it gives you a place to like fill out your own timeline based off of your own specific scenarios, because there's a lot of stuff that comes into play. And I'm happy to do calls and emails with people of sifting through where you're at in the whole process and saying, okay, here's your next step, here's probably your timeline. And that's just because, again, I'm super familiar with it and it just clicks fast in my brain. I'm totally fine doing that. I did that all the time for the old registered way of just helping people sort through where they're at in the process and how that aligns to the certification process. So totally happy to do that. Not a big deal. And if I don't have the answer to something, I can either reach out to the office and get a really fast response, or I will have you reach out as well. And then I usually document the answer because there's always some very unique things that come up. All right, emails were very lengthy. Yep, I get it, I understand. More concrete step-by-step guide. Again, CTRI schooling session, the office knows I did it. It's not endorsed by the office by any means, but they do know I gave them a heads up that I was doing that to try to, you know, just be another person out there encouraging you guys with this whole process. So I didn't do it behind the office's back. They know I did it. They're okay with it. So again, I'm not employed by the office, so everything I say in there is me as an individual and as a certified professional and as a mentor, but I hope it does kind of simplify all that. Let's see, someone said, what concerns me is the path requirements to maintain and ultimately change my advanced CRI certification, and it'll cost me more money and far more time than they list the certification. I think that might be the misunderstanding of the process of transitioning over. It's about the same amount of money to transition over as it would be to pay your membership and certification dues. And again, your continuing ed hours depends on where you get those. You could spend a lot of money, you could spend not a lot of money. So time, it's 20 hours of continuing ed in 2 years. I personally think that's not enough. Again, that's me, not speaking for Pat. That's me. But you know, that's not a ton of time. And I know people in the you know, medical industry, first responder industry, they're doing hundreds of continuing education hours a year. So we don't come close to the other things, and especially cost wise. So we'll be okay. I just think there was a misunderstanding with that concern. Let's see, as an advanced instructor, I did the transition. Not be a simple process. Yeah, see, it's not that bad. Good, thank you for sharing. Let's see. Transition to the CTRI, but the large number of practical hours needed before being able to mentor COVID is hindering me from being able to help instructors in training. So one, remember that those hours can be private lessons. They just have to be mounted therapeutic writing. They don't have to be group. Two, you can help people with other parts of their application before you get those 120. So help them through the equine management, help them through the horse handling, the disability experience. You can still be an asset to these instructors in training, even if you haven't gotten those 120 hours yet. So I hope that encourages you guys. We still need you. Let's see, not currently actively mentoring because as another advanced therapeutic writing instructor mentioned, it doesn't pay the bills. Again, I encourage mentors who are experienced and have a program and give a good educational experience to charge for it. You guys shouldn't be like charging out the wazoo. Charge a good rate for our industry and understand what people make in our industry, but we shouldn't be always giving things away for free. That's how we raise the quality and the pay in our industry is we lead by example in that way. And yeah, you might get pushback, but those are not going to be your ideal clients to work with, or your ideal people to work with, if you want to call them clients. And it's okay. You might get people that say, oh, no, thanks, I was looking for free. That's all right. Let's see. Higher education programs. So some of the colleges are recognized higher education programs, and you used to be able to get either like a workshop equivalent out of it, or there was other arrangements between colleges that were recognized higher education programs, or centers that offer training courses. I don't have any information on what that looks like with this new CTRI process way. I teach at a college that is a higher education college, and I know what that's going to look like. Again, I'm trying to just kind of just trudge forward, keep providing quality education, because education is still going to be needed. How that looks like in conjunction and collaboration with PATH, I don't know. Other people who are in those circles don't know either. So that's one thing I don't know the answer to yet. But I do know that education in our industry is still needed, and you still need to get education during the training process. All right, someone said that they were surprised with all the updates. That was great. Yeah, all right, so I think that was most of the stuff that came up on the post and the form and all of that. So anything before we close out here? And I will put my link to the schooling session for you guys if you want to see that. So that is specifically geared towards the CTRI certification process, how to study, how to prepare, understanding the video, all of that. I do have a mentor bootcamp replay. Contact me privately for that one. I don't have that up in public. I'm still formatting a few things, but if you're a mentor or a supervising instructor that you want to reformat and streamline and really refine your mentoring process in general, not just for the CTRI process, let me know, and I'd be happy to see if that's a good fit for you. Again, that's like 20, 30 bucks again, I think. So I try really hard to keep it low cost. But I want to say we got up to like 10 hours of education in that course and a workbook and all that. So yeah. And then check out my website, hooffallsandfootfalls.com. I have a ton of free blogs. YouTube channel has a bunch of free videos. A lot of those videos count for continuing education, oh, by the way. And shoot me an email, give me a call, reach out to me if you have any questions. Again, I love talking with everybody, love networking. I will help in any way I can. And if I don't know an answer to something, I will reach out to someone I know that probably knows the answer, or I'll reach out to the office. I talk to them probably once or twice a week through email and all that. So I totally am willing to do that. All right. Well, I'll hang out here till everyone gets off, but thank you guys so much. And I'll see you guys around in the online realm.
Thank you so much, Saebra.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Saebra, thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
That was
No
awesome.
problem. I'm so sorry, my brain